passage, if you would turn in your Bibles actually to the book of Proverbs first, as we look at Christ at the crossroads of ambition. And maybe I should have titled that Selfish Ambition. Christ at the crossroad of ambition. We'll start in the book of Proverbs, as we'll start at Proverbs 18, and we'll work our way over to the Gospel of Mark here. It won't be too long in the Proverbs, but just a couple of them there. Proverbs 18:12 is where we'll start. But selfish ambition. Do you believe that we're selfish people? Yeah. I'm glad you all are. And that was good, wasn't it? Tammy didn't buy it. We are selfish people. You know, it's just, that's the way the sin nature has made us. And it shares no golden rule, which is what? To do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's concerned about itself with results, achievement, power. Now, there's nothing wrong with ambition. It's just when you mix this letter P-R-I-D-E with it, that it becomes selfish ambition. And it rules our lives. There's nothing wrong with being motivated to do a good job or to dream dreams. The scriptures are full of exhortations to be steadfast and movable in our pursuit of excellence. But watch out when the sin of pride gets in, and then everything becomes about me, me, me. Remember, the middle letter of pride is what? I. And I always keep in my mind that pride turned an angel into a what? A devil. And that's what it can do to our lives when it gets in there. My Bible says God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And when you're walking around with pride in your life, you're working on the enemy's team. And I try to remember that, even though sometimes I forget. Webster says the dictionary definition of ambition is an ardent desire for rank, fame, and power, strong desire for advancement. But it can turn to the dark side, as I said, when pride gets in there. So Solomon tells us a few things about pride. Lots of things about it, and I'm just going to give you a few verses here about how ambition works according to Solomon, as I have on your outline. He paints several portraits of it, and we can catch both sides of the spectrum. But in Proverbs 18 and verse 12, and I'm going to read it here out of the New King James, and I have on my paper here the NIV, 18:12. Before destruction, the heart of a man is haughty, and before honor is humility. Remember, humility in God's eyes is the great virtue. Humility. Watch out for haughtiness. It says, before his downfall in the NIV, a man's heart is proud, but humility comes before honor. Now, this is not what the world's going to tell you. This is different. Proverbs 29:23, if you want to turn there, Proverbs 29:23, just a few pages over. It says, the man's pride will bring him low, but the humble in spirit will retain honor. So again and again you see humility equals honor, respect in God's kingdom. And that's kingdom living, is humility. Proverbs 15:27, back there just a few pages again. 15:27. He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live. In the NIV it says, a greedy man brings trouble to his family, but he who hates bribes will live. And again, we see that ambition, getting over anxious even in the field of money and gain and power and prestige. And people sometimes will almost trade their own soul for that. Matter of fact, Charlie Daniels wrote a little song about the devil and his pride. The devil went down to Georgia. You know, you heard that song, most of you probably have. And he played that fiddle. He said, I'll bet my fiddle against your golden fiddle against my soul, you know. And the devil played his best, and Johnny won. But it was still a thing over pride and prestige. Now, he won the duel, but I'm not sure he won the real battle with the pride thing. But anyhow, Proverbs chapter 25, one more here, in verse 27. We could get lots of things here on pride in this book, but Proverbs chapter 25, we're looking at ambition. 25, 27, it is not good to eat much honey, so to seek one's own glory is not glory. In the NIV it says, not good to eat much honey, nor is it honorable to seek one's own honor. And so there's lots of there, but over in the New Testament, we're going to see where ambition, selfish ambition, gets control of the disciples. You know, those 12 that were walking around with Jesus and who got so ambitious, they decided to ask Jesus for something that was pretty astounding. So we'll look there in Mark chapter 10. And Mark chapter 10 and verses 35 through 45. We'll read those so that we kind of catch them. Here this is Mark chapter 10. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, also known as the sons of thunder, came to him saying, Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Does that sound familiar? I'm hearing that a lot today on TV preachers and a lot of Christian folks. Lord, would you just do for me whatever I ask? Is that a little proudful? Little cocky there. And he says, and he said to them, what do you want me to do for you? They said to him, grant us that we may sit, one on your right hand and the other on your left, in your glory. Now, not much, Lord. We just want to be right up there with you. Number 1, number 2, and number 3, right here. A little ambitious. Anyhow, he goes on to say, they said to him, or verse 38, but Jesus said to them, you do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? And they said to him, we are able. So Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink the cup that I drink, and with the baptism I am baptized with, you will be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but is for those for whom it is prepared. And when the 10 heard it, they began to be greatly displeased with James and John. But Jesus called them to himself and said to them, you know that those who are considered rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever of you desires to be first shall be slave of all. And I have this verse marked in my Bible, and it's a good one to mark. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. So Jesus says that kingdom living is a little different than what the world's going to shove at you. It's approached by this question, can we sit at your right hand and on your left hand? So John and James are not really concerned about the rest of the disciples. They're just worried about who? Them. So Jesus, being the wonderful teacher that he is, who is not considering himself, but is considering others, and won't be too long, and there are going to be people throwing palm branches at his feet. Next chapter. And he knows that these people all are lifting him up at the moment, but later they're going to be what? Crucifying. And then all these disciples that want to sit on his right hand and his left hand, it won't be too long, what do they all do? they all run off also, follow from a distance. So what I'm saying is sometimes to be the head honcho costs you a whole lot. Paul is one of my biblical heroes, but I don't know if I'd want to walk in the footsteps that he walked in to get there, because he found out about humility, and he found out about being a servant, and he writes about it so often that Jesus Christ said that if you want to be number one in God's kingdom, you got to be last. If you want to be first, you got to be last. You don't have to be the boss, you just got to be the servant. Isn't that something? How many of us just can't wait to get up in the morning and serve somebody? We got a couple. Great. And that's the way we should be. That should be our heart, our mindset. When we come to church, we should come to what? Serve one another. And we're supposed to have that kind of heart. And they ask him this question, and you might think, well, boy, that sounds like kids talking instead of him. Would you just give us whatever we want? And you know what happens when you give people whatever they want, and you give kids whatever you want? You get spoiled brats. You get politicians. Amen. And they just want what? More. And the Lord knows all that, and He's working on them. And so He's going to tell them a little bit about what's going to happen to him. He said in verse 33 of chapter 10 that the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles. They will mock him, scourge him, spit on him, kill him, and the third day he will rise again. You guys are all ready to walk with him? He said, you guys thought this was going to be great. I'm going to set up this kingdom, and you're all going to set up here and have all these wonderful privileges. And he says, now let's go to real life. He says, you know what I'm facing? You ready to face that with me? And what did they say? No. They said yes. They did. Verse 39. He says, we are what? We are able. We are ready. We are willing. See, they didn't understand everything that's going to happen. He told them. He told them what's going to happen with him. They didn't understand. They said, yeah, we will indeed drink the cup. You know what? When he talks about the cup and the baptism, he's talking about the suffering he's going to go through. And you know what? Both of them, guess who the first church martyr is? James, chapter 12, Acts chapter 12, verse 2. James is the first of the disciples to be killed. Now, John, the Lord left around all the way to the end. But he lived in the Isle of Patmos, exiled. History tells us, church tradition tells us that John even was dropped in a thing of boiling oil. Didn't kill him. Sent him off to the island. And the Lord still didn't get done with him there, you know. He gave him that wonderful book of Revelation. He wrote those letters and epistles out there. God used him mightily. But how many of you are ready to get dropped? And most of the disciples were all martyred. Even Peter, crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy. See, Peter later gets the message. Peter doesn't get it yet. Neither did none of them. None of them got it at this moment. But later, they get it. And Peter's the one that writes about humility. Humility. And James writes about humility. And Jesus called unto himself and said, you don't know that my kingdom operates different than the kingdoms of this world. Most people can't wait to be the boss. They can't wait. They'll do anything they can to become. I even read this morning. It was unbelievable. A pastor, a book writer, decided that he wanted to have the #1 New York selling book. So you know what he did? He spent fortunes buying his own book so that it would sell so many. Now, is that selfish ambition or is that selfish ambition? That's what, and that's terrible if it happens with a pastor on top of it. And this guy was going through the list of some things. And it's just amazing how pride gets mixed in with ambition. And we don't care who we walk on, who we step on, or who we use, as long as we get the results that we want. And it doesn't stop outside the church doors. It can happen right in here amongst us. Here we got his close 12, one who will betray him. And Judas is probably right here saying this. And it's funny because Jesus just had a conversation with them. Just turn with me quickly back to chapter 9 and verse, let's see here. Let me get in my notes. It should be chapter 9, verse 30. Okay, here it is. Verse 33. Then he came to Capernaum, and he was in the house. He asked them, let's go back up a little bit more. I lost my spot here. He asked them in verse 33. Then he came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, what was it you disputed among yourselves on the road? So they had this conversation just a little bit before we get to where we're at, but they kept silent. For on the road they had disputed among themselves who would be the what? Jesus already knew they had this conversation, but I guess James and John were the first one that had the guts to speak up. But they were all, and then it says later in Mark 10, they were ticked off at John and James, but they shouldn't have been. That's called self-righteous indignation. They're asking for something that I would have asked, but I didn't get the chance to, or I didn't have the stomach to do it first. And he already told them that that's not the way it works. And he went on to say, and he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, if anyone desires to be first, he shall be last of all and a servant of all. So he says if you want to prosper in God's kingdom, you'll be a what? A servant. Are we willing to be a servant? I told you the Lord was teaching me about that when my wife had her back surgery. I learned what a real servant is. Now, I love my wife, and I've been a faithful, working hard husband for her for all the time we've been together that I remember. But the Lord wanted to take me deeper than that. I did things that I never thought that I would have to do. You know what? He was teaching me what a real servant is. Matter of fact, he says a bondservant is willing to get on his knees, take a towel, and wash the feet of these disciples. And he was teaching them a lesson, what? On humility, on being a servant. That's why he says, I didn't come to be served, I come to what? To serve. So if we have that attitude, we live in a world today that wants me to be served. Everyone wants me in today's society. And it's sad. Jesus says, or Paul says this in Philippians 2:3, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself. A lesson that Jesus said, there's nothing wrong with ambition. Just don't let it get in the way of your walk with the Lord. Don't let pride get in there. So I left you with these three things here at the end. To avoid the specter of vain and empty life, remember the lifestyle of the kingdom, servanthood. A little chorus, I don't know if you all know it, it's called Make Me a Servant. And it's a great little chorus that maybe we need to sing and be reminded of. Number 2, release the controls to God. Let Him reward you with promotions He has prepared for you. Jesus says that it's God who lifts up and God who brings down. You know, I wonder sometimes, how come we don't have a 3,000 people church right here at Newburgh? You know, that's not my business, really. Is it? That's God's business. He just told me as a pastor to be faithful with the folks that come to this church, right? He calls you to be faithful in this little church that we have, to be a servant here. And we have a lot of great servants here. We have people that when Shirley and I drive by even the building, I saw all the grass mowed. I saw the flowers popping up. I see the food prepared tonight. I see the music given to us today. I see people are going to count money. And people are going to take care of the business transactions of this church. We had special music. We got people doing that. And how much did they get paid for it? 0. You know what? That's what a servant's willing to do. You're going to hear a concert tonight. Bob has worked hard to bring those folks and put it all together. And guess what? Those folks are coming as servants of the Lord. I'm guaranteed they're not going to get enough money to get rich on tonight. You know, used to pastor a church and said, Lord, you keep him humble, we'll keep him broke. But you know what? I always thought when I first became a pastor, and this church that asked me to be their pastor said that a lot of people were turning them down because they couldn't pay them enough money. You know what? I think that's sad, isn't it? Somewhere along the line that doesn't add up. And it still breaks my heart when I hear those things because I'm not in it for the money. Oh yeah, I have bills to pay and I have to make money, but I come here because this is where the Lord would have me to come, and I came here to serve this church. That's why I came here. And if I fail to do that, you all boot me out, and I'll sign the paper. But that's what it's all about. It's not all about money. It's not all about fame. And you know, I thank God for those great pastors that can handle that. Like John MacArthur, Chuck Swindoll, Charles Stanley, all them, you know, which I consider great men of God that have money. Billy Graham, Franklin Graham, money, yeah, they have lots of money, but it hasn't went to their head, hasn't affected their ministry, and that can honor God, because God knows they can handle it, and I guess He knows that I can't. I can live with that. It don't make any difference, you know, right? That's not, my value is not placed upon how many people come in this church. My value is placed on me because Christ died for me. He paid it all, and I'm one of His children. And return to the priorities of Christ, to serve and to give, not take. Remember this little verse, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul?